So let's get started.
Yeah.
Do we have a roll call we need to do?
Yes, please. Chair Corrigan?
Here.
Vice Chair Abby Here. Director Gibbons? Here. Director Stinks?
Here.
And Director Smith will be arriving later.
Good job.
Super.
March Madness.
So the first item is public comments. I do see two
So
members of the
far.
public here. If either of you would like to speak, you're welcome to speak and do so now.
Thanks for asking. No, thanks.
Just here to observe.
Well,
Okay, great.
maybe during the topic, but
Okay,
not the
terrific.
general public comments. Thanks.
If you'd like to make a comment during one of the topics, just let me know. Thank you. The first item is the consent calendar. There's 3 items on it. Anything need to be pulled or further discussed?
I move, the consent calendar.
Second, anybody without a mouthful?
Sorry?
All in favor?
Is
Aye.
there a change?
Yeah, could I,
Sorry.
sorry. for one- We did get one question from a board member, which actually would make that report a little better.
Okay.
We're gonna add a section called alternatives. So,
To the staff report, what are we talking about?
yeah, so that's,
One
sorry,
C.
1C, changes to SVCE staff reports.
Great.
So it'll just be alternatives. I think many city councils have that already, so
That's
this is not the recommendation. What else could you do?
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, this is something we'll bring back in about 6 months, see how it's working, it'll evolve.
Should we redo that with as a amended?
Yeah. So,
I make a motion to consume, to approve consent calendar with item 1C amended.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Consent calendar passes with the appropriate edits. Regular calendar, the CEO's organizational assessment. Girish, how about if we let you make this presentation?
Okay, thank you.
I assume.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's scroll.
Yeah.
So we're going to do the presentation. I'll do the first part of the presentation and the latter part of the presentation when we are talking about some of the upcoming benefits, etc. Don's going to take it over. So here's our mission statement, and it's kind of, if you break down our mission statement, the first phrase, reduce dependence on fossil fuels by providing carbon-free, reliable energy. We've done a lot of that. So I wanted to bring you back and be talking about innovative programs. So I'm framing my entire presentation on our mission statement, and I'll get into that. We've been through our startup phase. It's actually prior to startup was the founding phase. Prior to April 16th was the founding phase, where we had folks like Bruce Carney and others in the community. Rod was doing this. And then we had the startup phase. I'd say we're at the last end of our startup phase with Milpitas. And so in June 1, we'll be at the end of the startup phase. Operations, we're doing pretty good. We've set up on all the big picture on our operations. Now we've been looking at programs, and I want to make sure the success, we keep our mind not just on bending the carbon curve, but we need to be price
I like that
competitive.
term.
Price competitive and fiscal strength. So we don't want to forget that. That's got to be the center of everything we are looking at, and we want to balance it. The key point I want to make here is there's been a 7-month hiatus in staffing due to Tom's departure. So there's a combination of a pent-up demand, both from the board wanting us to do things, from staff wanting to do things. We need to catch up, but then there's also additional staffing that may be needed based on where you want us to go. I'll just go through high level by department on all the areas we're doing pretty well. I kind of think of this as kind of maybe a battlefield where you say, all right, we know we have a legislative and regulatory front. Well, we don't have all the resources, but we know what the front is, and we know who's on the other side.
Amen.
So the fact that we've defined the front and we've defined the need, that to me is, all right, we've got our vision, but now we've got to implement. So I think essentially on all the areas, we're pretty good there, except for the program side. member of the public. Hey, Tom. So on current action, as we're moving forward, I want to make sure that we never forget that power supply is the biggest piece of our financial risk. It's 90% of our budget, and as much as we are going to be focused on decarbonization on the program side and fuel switching, et cetera, we want to make sure we have resources here that make sure we're providing affordable electricity and we're managing our risk properly. We've promoted Dennis, and now to fill in behind. I think that was one of my first and very easy decisions to make, to get Dennis up, to be promoted to director, so very happy about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And now we have two open positions. We have one person who will be taking up his job. We're going to retitle it Power System Manager. She's going to be talking to her employer today, and once
Giving notice.
giving notice today, and so in a couple of days, we should be able to announce that. So we're gonna get a person to take his position, and then we have an analyst who's starting
April 2nd, next week.
April 2nd. That's short term. Midterm, today we have folks like Z Global and PEA doing some of our work. Because there's so much money and so much volatility in these markets, I think we need to bring some of that expertise in-house. And so that's more midterm. I want to settle down, let this new person come in. Let's finish up 3 contracts in the RFO, and then take a look at what that balance is going to be. So that will come to you midterm. Okay, bending the carbon curve. Essentially, some of this is, so it's for the health and wealth of our community. It's our personal health, and it's for the wealth of the community as a whole. Being in Silicon Valley, you know, what differentiates us from every other area, and it's not going to be hyperbolic for me to say in the world. It's, we have not just, let me, the bottom part of it, we are disruptors. Silicon Valley, when people think of Silicon Valley, it's disruption, it's bold, it's moving the needle. We have an influence beyond what we would do locally, because people look to us as what is innovative. So that's the opportunity we have as a CCA that other CCAs don't have. And so when I think of some of the kinds of programs we want to be developing, whether it's on the big picture power supply side or even the program side, looking at proof of concepts, prototypes, and platform for innovation, we can have an influence way beyond just our service area. The scope, this is a little bit of exaggeration, but I think it's cleaning up electricity, done, right? So this is what you've done over the last year, and what Dennis is working on right now is getting longer term contracts in for wind, solar, etc. The 2 areas, gasoline is a big deal. That's where we get most of our emissions from, and it's a huge opportunity for us.
Actually, can you put diesel up there first?
Oh, yes,
Diesel and gasoline?
yes.
I mean, I was at a meeting at the Air District yesterday. The amount of air pollution from diesel is impacting all of us living near anywhere near corridors. And there's a disproportionate amount, highly disproportionate amount. If there's one thing you could do more quickly than anything else, I think reducing diesel, getting rid of the myth that diesel is clean.
Okay.
Fuel switching heavy vehicles, even though it's technically hard.
Mm-hmm. But this is
There's
where,
a huge amount of leverage here.
good, this is where prototyping, proof of concept, even if we do something with, that's very small, the fact that we may be the first to do it, and we do it in a very elegant way that can be copied and scaled up by others, that's where we can influence beyond our borders.
If you'll entertain another question, I think Liz, oh, we're good.
Okay. So this also leveraging partnerships. When you look at these 5 bullets, I don't think there's any other place in the country or maybe even the world that has a high quality in all these areas. And so anything that we are proposing, we want to layer in as many of these partnerships as we can so that we can multiply the impacts of what we do. We also came up with this thing of bridging the carbon divide. I don't fully know what that means, but it's essentially, when I talk to all the board members, for example, Gilroy and Morgan Hill have a different demographic than Los Altos and Cupertino. And so, again, the programs that we're offering, we want to make sure that customers, maybe senior citizens who don't have access to information. So it may not just be money, it may be the information divide too. We want to make that in. So these 3 slides of these platform for innovation kind of deals, what Silicon Valley is about, to these next 2 slides, that's kind of what I want to look at. In everything that we do, we want to kind of mesh these in. So those are more kind of vision, kind of what's going to get into everything that we do. And now I'm getting to in the weeds of what I am proposing to you. And our recommendation is what propose this to the board. I have 4 positions that we'd like to delete or defer. We had a general counsel and director of government affairs position that was reporting to me. I don't need a general counsel position in-house. Today, Greg's doing a great job, and the specialized legal help we need, we can't afford to bring in. I mean, these are folks we're paying hundreds of dollars an hour to help with specialized power supply contracts. We can't afford to bring that in.
But you don't, you only need it a fraction of the time, right?
That's exactly right.
You get a template once. and then-
It's a peaking resource
Yeah.
that
So
we
to
can
speak.
utilize from the outside, exactly. On Director of Government Affairs, I think we may need that today. I would say that we're kind of getting Hillary kind of groomed into taking on more of that role. She's been promoted to manager. And I would like to add, so this is the slide as a whole, a senior regulatory analyst and an associate legislative analyst to help her widen what she's doing. So today she's focusing a lot on the regulatory side. We really need to leverage the potential that we have. We have a lot of potential by having 13 elected officials on our board. So that's where we need that legislative analyst who's going to come in. And I joke about this, but I'll say this, okay, so I won't say it at the big meeting. But this legislative analyst is going to be setting up meetings with board members, and Director Sinks is going to be telling me enough meetings. I've had enough meetings. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the goal.
I'm skeptical.
That's the goal. Basically, we need to leverage the strength we have, local
More
groups.
importantly, get people too, right?
It's all.
Yeah.
And so it's different group, but it takes a lot of work to get to the district offices, to get to large stakeholders, whether it's BACMUD meetings, it's Silicon Valley Leadership Group, the local district offices, Sacramento. There's a lot of work that gets done there, and you know that.
No, I was thinking maybe, yeah, we should join the leadership group.
No.
No.
Okay,
Right?
and bill analysis too. So this person will do both. So I'm thinking of someone who's pretty junior, you know, maybe 1 year, 2 years out of college or something like that. Whereas the regulatory analyst, senior regulatory analyst will be someone who has actually some depth of subject matter expertise. Yes, oh, sorry.
Please go ahead.
We want to make sure we keep MTC and ABAG on that list of meetings as well.
Yes.
Cities Association and then the rules. So I'm on ABAG. Greg Sharp from Palo Alto is on ABAG, and he doesn't count, but Jeannie Bruins is on the MTC board. And we also have people on the VTA board. So we want to leverage those because.
Cortez is on the VTA board, for example.
And
Yes.
he's on MTC also. And I've reached out to MTC.
Right,
just a
yeah.
couple of days ago. But yeah, so all of this,
Yes.
that's what this person would do. Hillary's way too busy dealing with existential issues like PCIA, and she's an extension of staff for CAMP-CCA. So while we build up our CAMP-CCA resources, so that's where that whole area would go in.
That's good. That's great.
Dawn has been very generous in saying, finance manager and administrative analyst from HR, we'll wait for a bit. We'll use HR to go. Once we staff up fully, and by the way, today, your budget asked for 21 approved positions. I think in the midterm, and this is without much analysis, I think we'll end up at about 25. And maybe once we settle at 25, maybe at that time we may need an HR analyst, but that's a TBD later.
I really think, I mean, in my last startup, it was like, we got to 60 or 80 before we needed a full-time HR person.
Okay.
Are you using
And
an
in my
outside?
city,
I
yes.
see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, we're using outside.
So you may find that it's permanently okay.
Yep. That's,
You have to just do the numbers, and right, you'll see.
And I think, way back when, all of a year ago, I think we planned on 24 to 25 anyway. So we just, we went down and then we're going back up, which I don't see any issue with.
perfect.
Can I ask though about, just to be, I mean, I like where this is going, I would just say, are we really saving 700,000 or are we?
Shifting it.
Breaking even.
Yeah.
I was gonna,
Are we paying this money out effectively to our contractors?
it's, on the HR process, actually, it's probably cheaper, cost benefit to keep it outsourced as opposed to.
I understand, I'm just trying to say, are we really saving? Is that red figure the difference between what we would be paying if we brought those positions in-house versus contracting? Or is it just fully the cost of?
Saving.
It's the annualized cost of having those positions.
So it's not
It's not a variance between outsourcing.
We're paying a good part of that 700,000 a year to have those functions handled outside the company. So that's my only critique there.
That's a good
We'll
comment.
add that before we go to the board meeting,
Yeah.
to add the dollars.
The net.
with the-
I mean,
Perhaps
this is
the
all
press-
kind of, you're shuffling positions
Yes.
within the plan.
Yep,
Right.
That's what I get.
yep.
This almost makes it look like.
It's a net savings, and it's not.
Well, I think,
Exactly.
if
You
you're
got
gonna
it.
go that route, you need to show the net savings when you add in pension and other employee.
All of it, right.
True burden
So I
of
think it's okay
employee
to just
versus a
delete the,
consultant.
it's okay to delete the red.
It's okay to
Yeah.
delete it,
Yeah.
yeah, please.
Recommendation, stay within, you could start with, stay, retain the current staffing, the overall number of employees in the plan,
Mhm.
staffing plan, but we want to rearrange, right?
Yep.
That's your message.
Liz, you have a
That's
comment?
I was just
Got a
gonna say,
message.
rather than time the savings to the deleted deferred positions, I would make it a separate bullet, perhaps tied in with what Rod just said.
We'll do a net.
Or what you have here, fiscal impact, no
Well, it's
significant.
fine.
Yes,
That's
so-
fine, just
yeah,
leave it
that's
at
really
that.
what I
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
don't complicate it.
That one.
Yeah,
yeah.
that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
remove the red
Yeah,
herring?
just take
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
that's a red.
All right.
Which will be in our IPO.
All right. Then going to the reclassification of title, no fiscal impact, the marketing and public affairs director, Alan, he does a lot more than marketing and public affairs. So we're changing it to a director of customer care.
Oh, perfect.
To be more reflective of, kind of broader than just marketing and public affairs. Marketing and public affairs is subsumed within customer care.
Well, I think it also really gives the desired impression that we, customers are.
Well said.
We had 2 administrative analyst positions, one of them being Nick Zanato, who's basically our IT guy, full-time IT guy. So we're changing the administrative analyst to IT specialist. Manager of legislative regulatory affairs, this is just being cute, but a little bit on what you've asked me to do, which is instead of making it affairs, it's manager of legislative regulatory effectiveness. So it's kind of saying it's being more proactive and results oriented, especially since we're new. We need to be a lot more proactive on that area. And I've told you already about the manager on the power side. New positions. I would like to create a new director position titled Director of Decarbonization and Grid Innovation Programs. and had up to 2 positions reporting to this person, could be at the manager level. But those 2 TBD positions, I would wait till we have the director hired and let him or her figure out exactly what to do. We have some ideas about what the specialty needs to be,
Okay.
but maybe there's a phasing in, I don't know. But that's a TBD, but let's get the director in. I'm going on a little tangent here and also going to say decarbonization and grid innovation is everyone's job. It's not just this director's job. So we're actually going to change our business cards. So at the back of our business card, we'll have the future is electric and decarbonization and grid innovation. So whatever your title is, that's essentially what you're driving toward. Another new position is the senior regulatory analyst, because we don't have that in the box right now. We intended, back when Tom came up with the first org chart, there were 2 boxes under the manager position, but we will come back, if you're okay with this, with the actual job description and a resolution at the board meeting that fleshes this out for your approval. So bottom line, no net fiscal impact, we'll still remain at 21 positions. And this is what all that I've said for the last 7 or 8 minutes will look like. I also want, in terms of managing expectations, this is the immediate, so this is the catch-up to 21. And maybe 6 months from now, plus or minus, maybe when we come in with the budget for October, if there's some other changes that kind of evolve and say, oh yeah, we need to have this, I'll bring it back to you. So that gets to the medium term. It's getting the right people on the bus. I've reached out to some of my contacts that I've had here already, and they've given me contacts to other people who may be interested in working for SVCE. So part of what I also would like from you, before we get to Don's presentation, is it's a combination of here's my 30-day assessment and priorities. It's almost a confirmation, because I'm speaking this way to prospective employees and other people we talk to in different stakeholder groups. I want to make sure that when I'm saying this, you're, all right, this is good. So I would like your feedback on the first 2, the assessment and priorities, before we get to the compensation and benefits.
Why don't we have, if there's any comments from the executive committee, we'll have that first, and then members of the public, if you have comments you'd like to share, and then turn it back over to you,
Okay.
and then Don. How about that? Anybody have thoughts they want to share?
I think it makes sense. I think it's appropriate to have an open revisiting of where we are and how much we've accomplished and what's out there for us. We have a little clearer vision of what our potential is, our disrupting potential. So I think it makes sense. I'm on board with this. And I think the presentation is well structured to have the discussion at the board level.
Part of me is like, quite frankly, right, all this talk about innovation, blah, 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 Silicon Valley. It sounds good. The truth is, right, that any of our peers could do this too. But I like it. And the reason I do is, okay, yes, we happen to be in Silicon Valley. And I think making a name for ourselves with all of these stakeholders of the regulatory food chain is actually important, right? To be able to talk to state senators and the CPUC and FERC and whomever, or other people in the country, if we're actually serious about this, getting milpitas is not the thing. It's getting everybody around the country and actually around the world to say there's a different way of doing what you've been doing. And so community choice energy is a particular construct in California, happens in some other states, but I think the stories can tell and the leadership that we can bring. You know, the story about, we're doing a contract worth about $1 billion over 15, 20 years to do solar plus storage and wind with Monterey Bay. It's a great story. We ought to have 3 or 4 more in our quiver.
You feel good about?
We get somebody to go, you know, focus on innovative programs that put us on the map. It does more than put us on the map, right? It becomes a template that we can go pitch wherever we're going, Washington or Paris or, you know, I think it's good.
Margaret, any thoughts?
I think it's great. I appreciate the focus and, very much the org chart looks good, and focusing on legislative, affairs, I think is really key, so I appreciate that. And yeah, my question would be in that realm, you know, and this is, I think, a to be determined or ongoing question is our relationship with CalCCA and how we support them, or and trying to get Hillary to, you know, not have to split her roles, but be able to get them propped up to be their own.
Good. So I'm on the resources subcommittee at CalCCA,
Okay.
and so
good.
I actually had, there's a,
Resources means,
yeah, exactly, how do we get more resources to CalCCA? So I'm making a pitch to them tonight.
Okay.
We have a board meeting tomorrow, but a few of us are meeting. And so we're gonna make a pitch to basically, I'd like them to be staffed up to 5 people.
Yes.
And so when they're pitching one extra person, I think they need to actually say, hey, no, you need to actually get to about 5. And we have some support, but there's also a little bit of timidity.
Really?
Yeah, so anyway, we're pushing it, and, so.
Is it timidity from the lack of resources of the agencies, or is it
So,
just not buying into CalCCA yet, or?
it's yes on both in a way. I think there's one which is, since they've not actually, so even the cost allocation to all the members,
Mhm.
we've just started, right? So every time there's an increase, they're like, are people actually gonna be okay with that increase? The others, there's some of the largest CCAs that have been formed, and some others, hey, we already have our legislative person, so why do we need you? So there's a sense of that, and to me, it's not either or, it's an and, right? We wanna have Hillary here, working with CalCCA to make us, you know, it's kind of like geometric, it's a multiplying kind of strength. So I think there's gonna be, you know, there are folks like, say, like Tom, there are a few of us who've been through this before, and we know the power of actual joint action. So there's some of that just has to be education with some of the new people coming in,
Sum is greater than, out of the whole's greater than the parts.
right?
Yeah, I was just gonna make one other comment, and I was teasing Margaret. We had talked about the Silicon Valley, joint, what is it, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, thank you. And I had mentioned that there are some parallel efforts that they're doing, and I had suggested meeting on that basis. I hadn't thought about joining, but there's no question that it's a group that we have to be connected with.
I just thought PG&E is a member there, actually very vocal member. I used to be in their working council, so just to, you know, counter that.
Good.
So I didn't know, I had suggested Dan Harney talking with Peter, because he's the VP there, but you may know more people directly, so that was my
Yeah, I'm
suggestion.
happy to make that connection.
I'd like to give you just one bit of feedback, if we could just go back one slide here. So, sorry, one more. Very good. So I think if you are gonna make the similar presentation to the full board, I don't think you need to go into detail at the bottom of this slide, that whole reclassification. I'd love to query the rest of the board members, but to me, I don't think anybody really cares what you call, what titles staff has here. I think that's a direction that we expect you as CEO to make as appropriate. Do you care?
I don't care, but I do care that he cares.
Okay, so perhaps just streamline it and report out that we have changed certain titles in a way. what I wanna be careful about is not opening a box, Pandora's box here and having 13 cities pipe in and say, well, I think you should call him the
Yeah.
Board members
blankety
that might be
blank.
asking about.
Yeah, exactly, so I do wanna keep,
It could happen.
yeah, I do
Oh,
wanna
my.
keep things
It could
very
happen.
direct and
That's
simple.
what
I don't wanna point fingers, but I wanna share that feedback on this slide, you already have the other edit on there as well.
It may be, yeah.
And really, at the end of the day, I think your presentation is excellent, but as it should be, you know, we've hired a new CEO, you've come in, you should be, this should be a primary focus. So this should not come as a surprise to board members, it should not come as a surprise to our stakeholders that we are now, under your tutelage, going to staff up, we're going to be hiring people that are at your and your director's direction. So I think this makes perfect sense, it doesn't come as a surprise at all.
Your first message, if you just flip to the next slide, your first message would be, look, we're moving the chairs around a bit. No fiscal impact, remains at the budgeted 21 positions.
All right.
We have these new positions,
Okay.
we're making some title adjustments.
All right.
And then,
And filling the holes
And
that have
here's
been
some
long
new-
overdue.
yeah, the new
All right.
positions, I think I
I
would.
think what I'm hearing from you, I'll rearrange the flow of the slides. So start from big to small. I started from small to
And
big
you're not
here.
really asking our permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need our
We don't
permission.
have to, yeah.
I
Well,
appreciate.
maybe-
Well, no, I do
Like-
need your permission.
Well, like, okay.
Well, I guess we
Well,
can.
Yeah, because it is a
Right,
new position.
for the
For the
positions.
Fair enough.
director
Fair enough.
And,
The
the
new
senior
director
regulatory
level
analyst.
position probably.
Okay, so if all of us are finished making our giving us feedback, I'd love to ask the public if they have thoughts. Let's hear it.
James Talea from Sunnyvale, involved in Sunnyvale climate advocacy through Sunnyvale Cool for a long time, and last couple of years with Carbon Free Mountain View and then Carbon Free Silicon Valley working regionally. And I'm very pleased to see the overall direction here. It's knowing that the clean energy was coming, and this is just putting a lot of meat on the bones of the next steps, and happy to see it moving forward and being fleshed out in a way that is focused on where the big impacts, as well as Silicon Valley being a leader in innovation and climate advocacy and climate solutions going forward. I've been saying that in Sunnyvale with our city council, is if we don't do it here, who else is gonna do it? And so to see it actually moving in that direction and the discussion along those lines, that's really the way I'd seen it, because how's the whole middle of the country gonna start moving? We need to move further, faster, and more innovative and show the way. The couple other things that keeping an eye on disadvantaged communities is always very important. It's the right thing to do, and also I know from having worked in regulatory affairs at PG&E, if you don't do it, you're gonna end up on the wrong side of some things, and so that's very important to always keep in mind about anything that's being done. Is how do we reach those that are not easily reachable? It's hard, but the effort has to be there. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate your feedback, because I think it's also, our cities, because we're made up of, as a JPA,
Mhm.
it's very easy to look at the demographics from my town and
Yeah.
assume that's how we all are, and it's
Yeah.
in fact not, in a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
ways.
yeah, Sunnyvale, there's some.
I had an
tougher
interesting
areas.
conversation with some guys from Gilroy about how different
Uh-huh.
the makeup is, so we
Right.
have to remember our city.
Yeah, and just another example, I'm picking up on the senior challenge. With my job hat on, working in energy efficiency, we've had to bend over backwards to help some folks. The software that we use for Steve Schmidt's company, it relies on somebody to have a computer and to use email, and so in a couple of cases I've actually gone to the seniors' homes and walked them through it, and in one case set up a separate email account for them that just goes to me, and then I fax them the stuff. So because he doesn't have a computer or
That's
looks at
great.
email, and he's saving a lot of energy. So there's really good clients that can be helped, or customers in the service territory. It's tough to do the one-offs, but so ideally you find some broader ways to deal with disadvantaged communities too.
Thank you. Bruce, do you have any thoughts?
I do. Bruce Carney from Mountain View. I love the way this presentation has pointed the way to a future for Silicon Valley Clean Energy that's worthy of the time and attention that you're devoting to directing it. The future is electric, and the faster we get there, the less pain and environmental damage will take place. I also think that the 5 bullet points of the unique advantages of Silicon Valley in terms of academia and disruptive mindset and the wealth that we have are unique and really important, because my experience of 25 years trying to get local government to do things differently is getting someone to do something for the first time ever on the planet is really, really hard, because it's scary. So if this agency commits itself to trying things for the first time and sharing the results in detail, the ones that go well and the ones that don't go well, it would be hugely beneficial and different than most other places that I have dealt with. I think that Stanford and other universities will be fantastic partners, and they're a customer as well, I guess, so they should be ready to help. I think this message will excite the energy nerds who are part of Carbon-Free Mountain View and who are on the Mountain View Sustainability Task Force and the Sunnyvale Climate Action Program Review Team, as well as other cities. So it's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing what first on the planet thing will come out of the programs team.
How exciting. I heard somebody refer to you as Tom, is
Yes,
that right?
yes.
Hi, Tom. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yes, thank you. I'm Tom Cabot, also with Carbon-Free Silicon Valley, a longtime energy nerd, and I'm very encouraged by the steps you guys are taking and the bold actions. I like Bruce, I especially am impressed with keeping track of the five stages in this platform. I do think that's a big differentiator and a great way to provide leadership where it's needed to help the CCA movement evolve, to help people focus on bending that carbon curve. So I'm very glad that Girish is on board and that you guys are taking on this challenge, and I want to do what I can to help.
Does that help you? Is that the feedback you're looking for?
Exactly that. And
Wait, I love these meetings. Fantastic.
So in terms of managing expectations here as we go in order to achieve this, you need capacity.
Yes.
And the capacity is going to come from the core of people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that's kind of, we may do a little bit of go slow before we go fast to get the right people in. And when I say go slow, it literally is a few months. That's all we're talking about. So with that,
All right, thank you, Girish. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is just a few minutes, keep it at a high level, looking at compensation and benefits. And as Girish mentioned, there's been pent-up energy in that area as well for the past 6-7 months. So one thing we want to look at on the compensation side of it is to commission a study, pay study, to see how we are looking in the market. It's been probably close to 2 years now, before the agency probably just got after they were formed and formed an org chart is when the salary range came out. So it's a good time to relook at that. And also, many of us here have been here a year or closing in on a year. All your cities have a pretty structured approach to performance reviews and tying some sort of reward to that. And so we don't have anything in place now with Girish here. It's something that we're going to discuss over the next few months and bring that to the board.
This is some sort of bonus, annual bonuses?
Well, it's bonus, but more like a step.
Incentives, et cetera.
But yeah, somehow tie cash to performance.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll discuss a lot of different ways on that. So give us a couple months on that. Then on the benefits side of it, I think there's some low-hanging fruit that we could bring to the board over the next couple months, such as flexible work schedules. Right now we accommodate folks, but there's nothing actually officially in place. Perhaps some sort of a transportation benefit for using the bus or Caltrains. Many of your cities have that.
Not diesel. Just make that clear.
Clean diesel. Clean coal.
There goes Caltrain.
I'm joking.
And some folks have talked about, like, if I don't sign up for the health benefits, can I get some sort of in lieu of, which actually would be a benefit to the agency in whole. And many of your cities have that. So those are some low-hanging fruit.
My city that.
Okay. So there's some definite low-hanging fruit we could bring over and bring to the board for approval in the next couple of months. Longer view benefit strategies such as relooking at the health benefits, we can make that part of the budget process over the next 6 months. And then lastly, talent management.
Just, have we been having a difficult time with recruiting? I guess we haven't been doing that much, but I'm just wondering.
If I may anecdotally say something?
Yeah. That's okay.
A couple of folks who I had some difficulty, and this is the person who's going to talk to her employer today, wanted some flex time. This person comes in with 7.5 weeks of paid time off and sick leave on top of that. So we have 4 weeks of paid time off and sick leave together. And it's good for startup, but if you're trying to attract people who are senior, you need to have some flexibility in that. Also, flex time was something it's so expensive to live here.
Oh my God, well, the traffic's so
And
terrible.
the traffic and things like that. And if we do want to have that kind of startup mentality and innovative kind of place, we should be offering some of that. So I did have difficulty with this person, so we were able to give this person some leave without pay, but just on a temporary basis. But we need to get to you, get a full well thought out. But do you have any other examples, John?
No, that's been a challenge.
I was just gonna say, I think flex time and all of that is great. I do caution us, having people together and the synergy of having people together, I think is a very strong suit, given where we wanna go. So, I would just say that I think it's significant to do that, and you have to realize that. The second point is, in the early discussions about salaries, many of the board members had great angst about the size of the salaries. We are a quasi-public agency, and the salaries are substantively higher than our cities, kind of thing. So, the survey will be very helpful, but I think it's important for you as you go through and think about how to structure the discussion with the board. Be aware that that's a big issue for us.
Yeah. Please,
On
Margaret.
the other side of it, and my sense is that we are trying to attract folks from municipal or government, public agencies that have PERS or retirement, and we're not in PERS, right? So that would be my question is, and it will tie into salaries, and we might have, that's the, we might
some
have
of the
to.
trade-off.
Trade-off, right, yes, but what, I'd be more interested in finding out what our benefits are and if they are competitive to the PERS model.
If I may, we had a lengthy discussion of that early on, and, I don't remember the details, but clearly it was an issue.
So I'll just share that 2 weeks ago, the cover of Barron's was really talking about the shortage of qualified personnel across the country and the anticipated future look at how difficult it will be to attract and retain key talent. And having a staffing background, one of the things that I constantly was working with my clients, reminding them it's far cheaper to keep a good employee than it is to replace them. So being able to have programs in place that maintain, excite, energize, and tie your employees to your mission, I think is a good, it's good for the health of the organization and good for the individual employees that are there. So I fully support it, and I recognize the cost of living here in the Bay Area. If it takes being creative about flexible time or commuting perks, etc., I think that's good. I'll leave it to your discretion. I do agree with Liz's comments in terms of the collaborative opportunities that exist within the walls of your office, but again, with Skype and everything else, a lot of that's still available even from Milpitas, furthest away county.
And I would add that, you know, when Tom came in, he had an idea about how to keep this simple and not use all the traditional tools. And that seemed to work for him and the employees he hired at that time. It may be that we have to transition to something that is different, right? So the only thing I think Liz and the rest of the board is sensitive to is in terms of total compensation, right? Are we paying competitively? So I think we took some pains to try to do the studies to make sure that we were paying competitively, but not radically overpaying. Right? We'd like to be in the companies I've been in, you know, 60 to at least 50 to 75% bracket. But if you're up at 100 people, public agencies scratch your head and you're at the top, right? And if you're at the bottom or below 50%, good people will leave. But you just got to add up
Bennies and
all the
perks.
compensation, right?
Yeah.
You monetize it and then add it
Yeah.
up and then say, okay, how does our analyst stack up to an analyst in Marin? And how does a director of X, Y, or Z stack up?
Relative to their cost of living too.
And that's
Yeah.
what we do in the private sector, and I think.
But we're still public sector.
True.
Well, it's what we do in the private sector,
So-
and it's the way you get and keep great talent, whether you're public or private.
To the presentation or?
That's all.
Just last comment I was
Yeah,
gonna make
please.
on talent management is to your point, Director Corrigan, where we want to keep the folks here that we have. So we also want to look at education benefits. We don't have anything in place for
To
that now.
continuing education. Is that what
Continuing
you're talking
education
about? Yeah.
benefits, right. And then Bruce pointed this out earlier, but we want to support a matrix environment so everyone stays interested. We're all involved in somebody else's stuff because we have to be. There's 13 of us, and that keeps things going. And just recently we tried doing after hours or a lunch gathering and try to get group activities going. So this is a part of the non-monetary stuff that we can do to make people happy. So that concludes my
Perfect.
presentation.
So I think, are you just looking today for some support from, there we go. Next steps.
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just as a final caution, Rod and I were on the executive board when this original compensation and positions and so forth, out of the six on it, you and I were the two on it. It was a very contentious debate. And it had to do not so much with the cost of living and attracting people, as having this be a quasi-public agency. We're spending public dollars
The optics, yeah.
and also in comparison to city staff versus.
More than that, we're paying dollars we collected from our ratepayers.
Paying dollars from our ratepayers. So, I really want to address that is a significant analytical analysis. So you can't just go to the other CCAs, you've got to look at competitive heads of public agencies and different things and staff.
Okay.
Just so you're
Try to
prepared.
balance it out,
Yeah, just-
benefits and total package.
Sorry, yes, it looks like there's some public comment. Bruce, can I hold on one second? Let's finish the conversation up here.
So in terms of next steps, we would like your recommendation. So it's just the staffing plan. The benefits and compensation update, we'll present it to you at the April 24th exec committee. So we'll flesh that out more. This was more of, hey, this is something else that's coming. We wanted to tee up that part of the presentation.
Okay?
But at the board presentation, I would just say that verbally, but I'm not gonna get into, we won't have Don's presentation of that.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions of the report itself? Welcome, Nancy. Bruce.
Yes, thank you very much. Bruce Carney again. I would just like to say that it's my perspective that you recruit against municipal utilities, investor-owned utilities, and other CCAs. That comparisons to city government are not particularly appropriate. And my biggest concern is that here we are in the highest cost of living part of the world, no, actually just California. And you have a very talented staff already who have gained 6, 10, 12, 18 months of experience. If I were any other CCA, this would be who I would be coming to recruit first, because they've established the relatively high salary that goes with working in this area, and they would leverage that existing salary to work in a lower cost of living area, as our former executive director demonstrated. And many of our staff commute from quite a long ways away, so they could make their personal life easier by transferring to their hometown CCA. So I consider retention to be a huge red flag for this organization, and encourage you to do everything you can, as Courtney said, to retain the good staff you have, and find a way that when you hire more good staff, they don't use this as a training ground before they go somewhere else.
Great, of course I agree. James or Tom, anything from either of you? Okay, so what direction do you want specifically today? Just to approve the org chart you presented as
Correct.
part of the packet?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion? It looked like the consensus was generally uniform in support.
I so move support of the org chart.
Terrific. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Nancy, would you like to abstain, or would you prefer to vote with the four of us who sounded? I don't mean to put pressure on you, but I think the minutes should reflect.
I think I'll abstain because I was
Perfect.
not part of the discussion.
And if you would note that the abstention was based on her absence from the bulk of the conversation.
And you'll have a chance to do it as part of the board.
Right, but I don't want this to go to the board with a vote that looks squirrely. I want to make sure it's clear that it came out with unanimous support from those who were here.
And so I do have some questions, which I won't burden the larger body with because I was late, but I am meeting with CEO
Girish.
well, I don't know his last name yet.
Balachandran.
Balachandran
Yes.
tomorrow.
Balachandran or?
Balachandran. Balachandran?
Balachandran.
Balachandran? He said say it fast. That's
Yeah.
what he told me. Say it fast.
And,
It's like snowboarding. The faster you go, the easier it
Don't think about it.
I am sure that this item will be a topic of
I
conversation.
got some harder names.
Yeah. Terrific.
I'll bring forward any, concerns I have through the course of the do business of the block.
All right, with that, let's move on to item 3. Update on SVCE market share analysis.
This was interesting. As most of this is.
I'm gonna go read my teeth.
No presentation, it's just that. This is as it's related in the staff report. It is really, we've been reporting on opt-out rate, and opt-out rate is really not a good indication of the participation rate of our customers in our service, because it's an additive everything. Everybody opt out, then it adds to the original number. Really, a good measure is two things. One is the real opt-out rate, or the real participation rate, which is the eligible customers in our service area versus the ones that are with us. So this is the real participation rate. The other number is also the market share, is how much load is in our area and how much load are we serving. And that's the true indication of our success and our ability to actually serve our area and bend the carbon curve of serving that load with clean energy. So that's what we're proposing, also to change things in the future, also to take out the market share number, and that market share number would be, it's an internal number. It allows us to look at our own performance and ability to go after the departed load, or the load that we did not include. So we are, to make sure that we are serving all the load that we can. There are one tweak here is the 15 by 15 rule, which is kind of prevent us, from a privacy way, it prevents us from actually sharing the load, simply because that small load that is not part of, we're not serving, and somebody in that load could constitute more than 15% of that load, which exists today. This way, we would rather report this market share analysis at the risk oversight committee, which will keep it as a non-public information, just so that we can comply with the 15 by 15 rule, which is a very, very strict rule in sharing.
Can you reiterate that? I don't understand the rule.
So if we cannot share a load that more than 15% of that load belongs to one customer, or you cannot share the number of customers if there's less than 15 people or accounts in that
Okay.
group, okay? So it's two things, one is the load size and one is the number of accounts.
And you have to satisfy both conditions.
Right, the condition about the number of
We have
customers
a
is not a
customer that's
problem.
over 15% of our aggregate load.
On the opted out, yes, in the opted out number, yes. So, the number of accounts is not a problem, because there is a lot more than 15. But in the load size, as far as that size of that load compared to the size of the opted out load is more than 15. So that would put us in a situation where.
So the numbers you think we ought to be publishing on an annual basis are just the first 2 lines?
Is the accounts.
Account,
The
not
accounts.
or
Participation, I'd like to call it.
Participation.
Participation rate. So.
But you don't even think we can publish the very first line here?
Right. We shouldn't be doing that, based on our. Now
Are
the
you
participation.
sure?
I mean, that's how that rule is actually designed. It's.
It says
I
that
mean-
we have 91.66% of our total available market in terms of load. And you
Right.
think we can't publish that?
No. Because the 8.4%.
I didn't ask about that, I asked about the first line.
If I may, just, I think we may be able to, I think you were saying the opt-out, right? We can't, so we haven't actually shown that to you, but if you're looking at the opt-out, the 8.34%, how is that broken up?
I wasn't asking.
I know what you're asking, and I think so.
We can't even, technically, we can't even say 8.3.
No, I know, but he's asking about the first line. I think we can actually talk about this one.
Because that would imply that
I didn't
8.34.
ask what was
This
implied.
first line,
I'm
SVCE
trying to follow.
megawatt hour?
That's your option.
You have to comply with the spirit of the 15 by 15.
Yeah, because anybody reading it would infer the 8.34.
Right.
So,
But what does that tell you?
It tells you that,
so
I
you're saying you can't
understand.
extrapolate, pardon me, you can't extrapolate that to one
Uh,
customer being 15%.
and the rule is not about whether you can actually tell who it is or not, because it's hard to tell who it is, right?
Could
But
I-
it's about the statement.
Let me step back a little bit and
Please.
tell you the essence of what we're trying to do here is, the problem we have is opt-outs get counted cumulatively.
Sure.
So every month we continue to report on opt-outs, that percentage will only get worse, bigger, because we're not doing anything with net. It's just the gross opt-outs. We're not talking about move-ins, for example, and we're not, so this is okay. The way we were reporting it was perfect for our startup phase. So essentially, that's what we're talking about. For the startup phase, that opt-out was okay. But as we stabilize,
that opt-out is actually going to be a mistaken metric. And so what we are teeing up for you is starting around July or so, after we finish the Milpitas inclusion, we'll start moving to a different kind of reporting, which is participation by account and participation by load. And we'll also.
As a fraction of total available market.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Those would be the first two lines in my mind. But is that not what these things are? What does the 91.66% mean, for example?
It means that's the available load to us, but that's the load that we serve. The other is have opted out, 8.34%.
So of all the load that we could have,
We are serving.
that's
91.
not direct access, meaning
Right,
the
not
load-
direct access and. not-
Our load plus PG&E's load, we've got 91.66% of that, right?
Yes.
And we've got 95.02% of the customers.
Account numbers, yes. Now, moving forward to, as Girish was saying, the account numbers will be trued up against eligible account numbers. So maybe we can report that every 3 months or so to see what's available. That means they are actually eligible to be CCA members, and then compared towards the ones that we have. And that number may not be much different, it'll be 95, 96, could be 94, but it will be accurate. It'll be more accurate than this one now. Not a whole lot of difference there. In load, again, we would continue to monitor that as part of our performance and as part of our, work going forward. However, we may want to contain that within internally, simply because of the 15 by 15 rule. That's all.
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
if there's a way to do it without, it would seem to me like this would be a key these top two lines are key metrics for the whole board. So if there is a way to continue to have them to be public, I would ask staff to figure it out. I mean, I understand.
We could
why-
look into that, and actually we could discuss it with our attorney as well.
Yeah.
I think
Liz.
this is based on some recommendation.
Go ahead.
I think that's a good next step on this particular topic, because often at the board, we have had discussions on exactly this, not for the reasons you're now explaining, but trying to understand it from a different perspective. And this staff report made a lot of sense to me. So I think this is the right approach for all the reasons you've stated. We just have to figure out a way to communicate it successfully and acceptably.
I really agree with you, Liz. I thought the staff report made it simpler than I think this conversation went.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say that, but I did want to give you that feedback. I think this is why it's a good proving ground here, because we're gonna get exponentially more opinions when we put all 13 of us together. Yeah, please.
So, it seemed to me that the staff report indicated that there was some concern about the marketing impact of disclosing in public the load numbers. Is that correct? Or
Not
is it
just
more like?
marketing, it's more as a regulatory.
It's more regulatory?
Yes.
And there,
It's just the last paragraph that says to comply with the regulatory requirements, we may not be able to actually show the load.
I wanted to know what is the nature of the uncertainty, because you're not saying we must not show, you're saying we may not be able to show.
It's actually, we must not show, I mean, that's the, let me take this back to our attorney,
Because I would like a
because that
stronger
is-
statement than that,
because we maybe just cannot share that load, period. We're trying to get gas load, for example, for our gas inventory, and that might be an issue that we can't get specific per city because of that. There are specific load of gas load in certain cities where one, let's say a factory that makes something that we build with, I'm saying cement factory, could be a high user, and then suddenly that now masks the load and we can't get it. So it becomes more aggregated. And that's just an example of how that rule is followed very strictly.
We do have a right, though, to enter into non-disclosure agreements with entities, including cities, do we not?
We see the load ourselves. We have the right to all this.
No, that was
It's
my
just-
question.
what was
I
it?
asked if we have the right to enter into non-disclosure agreements with member cities to communicate certain information which might be sensitive, for example.
Okay. I mean, these are companies. I don't think they're cities that have this issue.
No, you're misunderstanding. If I'm doing a greenhouse gas inventory,
Uh-huh.
or I want certain information about the load in my city, or certain information, things that we know about energy consumption in cities, is there anything that prohibits us from, under confidentiality agreement or understanding, that we can't have an open exchange with cities about things like, electricity loads, in the interest of computing these inventories and so forth?
Cities don't even have that to them. I mean, you're talking about.
My city does. What are you talking about? The
This-
whole reason we started this is because we did a greenhouse gas
Rod,
inventory.
cool it.
I understand, but
I don't-
however,
What are you talking about?
the cities don't have the, as far as I understand, they don't have the disaggregated load in the gas that's coming from PG&E. This is what I just learned today, that we can't even have, PG&E will not tell us what cities, the gas consumption of that one city versus another city, because of certain companies that use that load in that city that would violate the 15 by 15 rule.
So there's certain information we can't get from PG&E.
That's right. On gas. On electricity, we have all the information due to some CCA rules during the legislative rule by CCAs.
So, yeah, please.
So, I'd like to say a couple of things. First, this is provided to you as an information item. We don't plan to take this to the board. We're gonna make some changes to our reporting starting July. Based on the conversation here, what we can do is, at the next meeting, we'll bring back more specifics on the 15 by 15. So those would be the things that we, maybe as an action item, we can bring back. And then, there's some additional questions I think Director Sinks may have on access to data and disclosure. We can also address
All
that.
I'm wondering, I mean, at the end of the day, right, we want transparency. We would like the public to have as much information as they can. Subject to regulatory requirements and, things that would put our business at risk. So that's why we have a risk committee, I get that. But for, essential metrics, I think the kind of questions you should ask the attorney about are, if there's certain information that would be important in aggregate for the board to know, can we talk about that in closed session with the entire board?
Sure.
Do we have the ability to the extent we have, load information, which we wouldn't want to reveal publicly because it would compromise our customers, and may be, against regulatory requirement. Do we still have mechanisms to be able to share what information we have with our member cities in the county? To the extent that we're trying to cooperate on constructing innovative programs and, reducing our carbon footprint and fuel switching and all that sort of thing. Those are the questions I think that are important.
So if I can just wrap up this conversation, because I think we're, don't need to take any action. I would like to just distill what I've heard today and suggest that you really stick to what makes the most sense. I've heard it from Liz, from myself, possibly Nancy as well, is clarifying that as the organization has matured, this is no longer the best metric to measure ourselves by. And I think with that clean, simple messaging, we will keep the discussion where it needs to be. I don't think any of us really care how you report or measure. I don't care if you do it behind the scenes in ways that is valuable to us but not publicly able to be reported. What we care about is the metrics we're using to report out in public are within the letter of the law and are metrics that make sense. Opt-out does not make sense when you're a year old.
Right.
You're no longer gonna start to see huge shifts. What makes sense is we've captured a client that we lost in the initial opt-out phase, but now that we've matured, we've regained them after successfully negotiating, et
So
cetera.
it
That's-
really is, it's really, so the metric, what I think you're saying we're agreeing on is this idea of what fraction of total market have we acquired in customers and also in load.
Right.
Okay.
Good enough? Anything
Yeah.
else, Liz?
Sorry, this is perhaps not relevant, but I'll just say it because it came to my mind. Early on, we had a discussion about the load versus solar that was on individual buildings. And at some point, we might want to go back to that because I was told we had to budget for the whole load. We couldn't assume the solar load. I forget the details now, but I remember being confused, so obviously I still am. So I can talk with you afterwards,
All right.
but it has to do with the percentage of the load, and the fact that more and more solar is coming on and how that might impact this.
Forecast.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else from staff? Anything else from this table? Is there anything for the public? Yes, Bruce.
Yes, so I think this is a really good change. I would ask that you direct your attention to the second line, the SVC account percentage, which has gone up continuously every month through December. And so what this brings to mind is, what is the experience like of someone who moves into a new home or into an apartment? What do they see as their choices, or are they even aware that they have a choice other than SVCE? I think that's something that I, as a member of the public, and I think the board would like to understand more clearly, because it may represent an opportunity for higher performance. Also, I must say that the only reason to have greenhouse gas assessments is to publicize them and take action based on them. So I hope we don't run into a situation where GHG numbers can't be shared with the public. In Mountain View, we certainly know what PG&E's delivery of electricity and natural gas have been. And
You do.
in Los Altos Hills, you do that as well, even though Foothill, Foothill must be far more than 15% of the total load. So somehow, people who work with these numbers, like Steve Schmidt, are getting the numbers they need. So I hope we can continue to do that.
Anything else?
Great point.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 3. Vote 4. Correct? Sorry, I'm not on the agenda page, I'm just going through the, that is number 4.
So what we'd like to propose here is a workshop series for the board. It's, and because all of you have very busy schedules and you all work on multiple other things, we thought the best time to do it is 5 p.m. on a board meeting day. So you're already keeping yourself free for that evening, so get you at 5 p.m., an hour and a quarter, where we would talk about, and as Eric goes down
Right
a
after
little
feed
bit.
us.
Yes, so it's 5 to 6:15, 30 minutes for the board and attending staff. It'll be a dinner like this, sandwiches, whatever it is. It's mostly education and getting into some detail on topics that will help you and all of us as we get into recommendations coming up 6 months from now and a year from now. We're thinking the first one will be something on building electrification. We'll bring some experts in, so it'll be a combination of staff and experts. We have EPRI close by, and we have some other folks that Alan has actually contacted, architects who know about electrification, zero net energy, etc.
Cool.
So that's the proposal.
Please, Margaret.
Just questions, is this monthly or?
So
just
right now, we're
logistically?
thinking 3 times, every other month,
Oh, okay.
so 3 times in the next 6 months.
Uh-huh.
And then if you don't like it, we'll change it or we'll get rid of it. And if you like it, it's completely it has to be useful for you. It's education. It's also a time for the board to, in a way, you'll get to know each other better, because there'll be questions back and forth, and there's no pressure, because there's no decision you're making. It's purely, it will be a Brown Act meeting.
And open to the public?
Open to the public. So we're thinking it will be in the same location at Cupertino City Hall, but they have a great room where you can rearrange the chairs to make it more a workshop setting, so you wouldn't be behind the desk. You'll actually be, yeah, in front.
We also have a mud pit outside if we wanna have some.
Wrestling.
Oh
dear.
I
Okay.
think we need that after.
Liz, you have something to add.
I was just saying that we have found, instead of study sessions or work sessions, that staff can write us memos, and we have found those to be helpful. So I offer that if you're going through your list of topics, you might find some that are easier. And even if we have the memo, we could have a shorter study session on it, kind of thing. And the other is, we've had two workshops, three workshops. The two for the board and one for the community group. And it might be nice to put those in a folder, and each time we do one of these, so that if somebody wants to get caught up or whatever, it might be nice to have a single folder someplace that the board members can get on our webpage,
Library.
like a library.
Sounds great, a resource, yeah.
I mean, the other thing you may be able to do is arrange to have them taped.
Oh, I love that idea.
Taping the meetings. The staff's, it's not much incremental effort for them to do that, so you could ask.
I'll ask the Cupertino contact.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna offer a contrarian point of view, which I hate doing because I do in concept think this idea is excellent. But as a parent with 3 kids, while I love the idea of not having to feed them dinner and leaving that job to my husband, that's a tough time of day for me. And it adds to the amount of the commitment I'm making that evening, which is a hardship on my family as well as my brain. So I would like to consider, if this doesn't succeed, run with it as you have it planned. But if it doesn't draw the kind of attendance you want, that we consider doing it on a night not tag team to the board meeting. And perhaps looking at a daytime forum, not Saturday, I think was the conflict I had last time. The bottom line is, you're always gonna have somebody's always gonna have a conflict. I can't come during the day because I work, I can't come during the evening because I have kids. So it's never gonna be perfect, but I think taping it is an awesome idea. I think separating it from the board meeting has some pluses, but it also might draw more attendance to our board meetings from public who wants to come and have a study session with us too. So there's trade-offs here, so
Or we could do it at
maybe
10
do it,
PM after the board.
maybe do it, maybe look at doing it.
alcohol.
I like that. I'm in.
Alcohol
I'm in.
and mud pit.
And then
I'm
that's it,
in.
yeah.
Jello shots and mud pit. I can already see this is gonna go
Ethanol,
down.
the new fossil fuel.
Do not put that in the minutes. Okay, so I would like to suggest that when you do schedule it, maybe you look at alternating, if you're looking at doing it every other month, or maybe once a quarter, that one time it's with the board meeting, the next time it's
That's an idea.
standalone. And let's see how that draws. Just for, I'm taking my prerogative of adding my 2
We
cents.
could do the doodle poll routine.
A doodle poll.
I mean, a lot of us do work and have other commitments, but in terms of council commitments, most of our council commitments are afternoons and evenings, so sometimes mornings are better.
Just saying. Anything else from anybody else at the table?
We could do a lunch and
Anything
learn.
else from the members of the
Lunch
public?
and learn.
who
Lunch and learn.
graced us today with your presence? Yes, James.
James Talia, just briefly, I think it's a good idea to keep everybody refreshed and learn new things, and particularly because you also have board turnover, and it prevents board becoming less active and less engaged. The more that they constantly stay up on it. Otherwise, worst case scenario is you'll just end up rubber stamping what the staff wants and becoming stale. I don't think that would happen here, but I mean that's in a lesser CCE maybe that would happen.
Or a less well-run one, a less
say
well-run one.
Exactly, that's it. It's a good idea, thank you.
Well, so note that I have already taken a contrarian point of view to the staff today, so you can add that to my file. Is there anything else for anyone else? No, hearing and seeing nothing else, I will adjourn today's meeting, and thank you all for being here. Is there wait, did I miss anything else?
No.
Committee staff remarks, is there anything?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I knew I was going too
I
fast.
want to invite the board, there's a Community Choice Energy Summit in La Jolla, 25th and 26th. If you want to go to,
Sandwiches and
you have budgeted money for travel, it's in the budget for education and travel, so if you would get back to me, and for CCAs.
Wait, did you say you have budget?
Yes, we do have budget for travel. The actual fee for, it's an InfoCast deal. If you're an elected official, board member, etc., I think it's $80 or something like that. So you're only paying for travel and hotel. I think it'll be a great opportunity to mingle with other CCA board members, staff, etc.
So that's my question, right? I mean, of all the things we could do, would you put this high up on our list? If it brings more, I mean, I would go, for example, I'm not sure how much I'm gonna learn.
Can we send you?
One
On a diesel train.
Some of you have been before, right, for the one last year? So my question, right, is I would go if we were doing evangelism, basically.
It's
So
super
this is
Other
not
elected
Yes,
officials
yes.
to tell them our story. You know,
Participate
you're
with
elected, I'm
CCA.
elected, those people are staff, forget it, but I'm gonna tell you why this is something you ought to push for hard.
In your
So
community.
this-
I would do that.
And why you should be part of Cal CCA.
So this
Yes.
is not a one-off opportunity. So just so you know also, a few of us CCA directors just met this morning. We're looking at incorporating academia in our
Yeah,
future
that's
Smart
outreach.
people.
And
Like you could get some of them, these.
so you have April, you're gonna have another one in June, which is the Local Energy Symposium, which is gonna bring a whole bunch of cities that's in Sacramento.
Great.
And then we're looking at September being the annual meeting of Cal CCA in Monterey Bay.
Oh, I like it.
So, yeah, so the multiple, okay,
If we miss this one, there's other opportunities.
that's right.
Liz.
So, two things. The sooner you can give us the dates for those other opportunities, the better. One, because there are a whole lot of other events, and the League of California Cities has some parallel time events from the dates you just gave, the month you just gave. And two, Rod, how do we report this? If Silicon Valley Clean Energy pays this?
Just a business trip, I mean, it's not a gift or anything.
You don't have any, we don't have to put it on our Form 700s or anything?
I think, but, you know, I
Because
mean,
we're working on this.
Okay.
what, I got to speak at, there are other places we ought to be showing up. And one that I'd ask my colleagues to think about. I got to be a speaker representing, it was just Jan Pepper and I, this great big Stanford
I saw-
Energy
yeah, I saw
Summit
that,
in June. A couple years ago. I can't make it this year, but I think we ought to be starting to show up at these venues
Agreed.
and telling our story, because you know the IOUs are there. And the dialogue very often goes to ignoring the impact we're making, or actually talking about it in a
Negative way.
negative way. So, you know, events, I mean, I would actually appreciate if staff got on Stanford's email list and started letting us
Nice
know
idea.
about
And Silicon Valley.
opportunities to spread this message,
Yeah.
the goodness of what we're doing in the broader community. So we can invite people, I mean, Mark Jacobson and others, right, who have been leading thinkers in this for a long time. So I think we all also ought to be planning to go the other way, which could be San Diego or La Jolla, it could be Stanford.
Anything else from staff to report?
Good.
Sorry to cut you off, but I'm getting us out of here by 1.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.